the speaker. The name you have seen, but here is this little house in Dakshai that he grew up in when his father was the CEO in Dakshai. He is now gone on to become a general of the army and then retired, but he's written a fantastic book, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome the author, General Sandhu. So that little house still exists. It's very close to the military hospital of Dakshai and is now being used as the family ward. So, big hand to General Sandhu, a local product from Dakshai. And I think for most of you, the interlocutor needs absolutely no introduction, but I'm really proud to say, I don't know if it's in the Guinness Book of World Records, but Alok Kler, who is General Alok Kler, his family has the maximum number of officers from one single family anywhere in the world. I think it's in the Guinness Book of World Records. Alok, you might want to confirm or deny that, but let's welcome Lieutenant General Alok Kler, VSM, Chief of Staff, RTRAC, and I think in the next couple of years we would like to say hail to the Chief. Alok? He must be mounted somewhere. We're still waiting, Alok. Well, Anu was sitting here, so Alok must be around. Wait. Ah, there he is. Yes, please welcome General Alok Kler. Welcome, Alok.
Thank you, sir.
Just want to ask before I move off from here, is it in the Guinness Book of World Records that your family has the maximum number of officers ever in one single family? Is this correct?
We have a fair amount, sir. We have a record.
Yeah, well, I believe the Guinness Book of World Record carries that. But anyway, welcome to Alok.
Thanks, Anand. And thank you, Mr. Kushwant. There are two soldiers out here. One's put aside his artillery piece. The other is tank. We are holding books. And I'm certain you're smiling down on us. Okay, battleground Chhamb. Take a piece of ground. 10 kilometers by 10 kilometers. That's approximately the distance from here to Dharampur. Throw in 20,000 soldiers. Throw in 200 tanks. Throw in the destruction being visited by 300 artillery pieces. Throw in 400 sorties by aircraft in a period of just 14 days. And throw out 3,569 dead, wounded, and missing. And you get the blood fest called Chhamb. That is battleground Chhamb. It is, in recorded history of Indo-Pak wars, perhaps the bloodiest battle which has taken place. And talking about history, military history is rather unkind to the defeated, to the vanquished. You know, the winner takes it all. However, here is an occasion in Chhamb, and specifically in this book, where you have accounts of amazing gallantry, valor, and even military chivalry by both sides. And this, of course, is a bit of a conundrum. And the answer to this is going to emerge somewhere at the end of our presentation. Having said so, in the words of Doug MacArthur, old soldiers, we have a number of old soldiers, veterans in this crowd, some of them with a direct relationship to Chhamb. Between the author, that's General Sandhu, and I think there are 6 generals whom we have the honor of serving with in this crowd. So to all these old soldiers and our veterans and the serving soldiers in this crowd, our deepest respects and our greetings to you all. Now, to set the tone and tenor for this book, we're going to start with a short video clip of about 6 minutes recorded by General Sandhu. time to get cracking. This morning I was just running through this account as to how I plan to cover it with my wife. And somewhere halfway through, she says, Alok, why did we fight Pakistan in 71? So that was a eureka moment, and I realized we were taking it for granted that everybody out here would know as to why we fought it out with Pakistan in 71. So I'm going to request A.J.S.Sandhu to quickly cover as to what really started the 71 battle.
This was a war which needn't have been. Unlike the earlier two wars of 1947, 48 and 65, and for that matter even Kargil many years later, this war was not fought over Kashmir. It was in fact an external manifestation of an internal dispute of Pakistan. The origins can be actually traced to the general elections held in December 1970 in Pakistan, which threw up a majority for Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's Awami League. Now, Awami League was basically East Pakistan based. And you know, at that time there was a lot of friction between both the East and West Pakistan. And by denying prime ministership to Mujibur Rahman, Yahya Khan set in motion a chain of events, the unintended consequence of which was actually this war. Now, all this is covered in the book. I have a brief chapter on the build-up to the war. And it starts really from 1968 when Ayub resigned, Yahya took over, and then the elections, and then the political activity, intense political activity in Pakistan to form a government, the failure, the military crackdown, actually which set the tone, because after the military crackdown it was nothing short of genocide. And two things happened after the military crackdown, and that was the formation of Mukti Bahani, some based in Pakistan, many who came to India, and of course, something which was mentioned in passing, I think, yesterday or day before, a steady influx of refugees, which at one point reached 10 million and had its attendant problems on us. Today we talk of 40,000 Rohingyas or 4 lakhs, imagine 10 million. There was famine, not famine, I mean there was a cholera outbreak there. There was security problems and other things. So there was diplomatic activity also from both sides to try to, get people on their own side. And as far as Mrs. Indira Gandhi is concerned, she and Swaran Singh undertook a lot of visits to get USA, Russia, Germany, England, at least these countries, to pressurize Pakistan to bring about some kind of a solution, but that didn't happen. And then in November, some cross-border skirmishes started, the biggest of which was on 22nd of November, when we knocked off 13 Shafi tanks. And the next day, 3 Pakistani sabers were shot, 2 Pakistani pilots captured. The question was not if, but when. And the dilemma of ours was solved when Pakistan struck on 3rd. And how Mrs. Indira Gandhi got to know is in the book. I've quoted G.N. Dixit. She was mid-flight, and what all happened I won't cover now. But that's how the war started.
Pakistan seems to have a fixation with Chhamb. 1947-48 Chhamb. 1965 Chhamb. 1971 Chhamb. So, why Chhamb? What is the importance of Chhamb? I'm sure you'd like to cover that for us.
The short answer to that is the location. The location and the terrain configuration, the lie of the ground there. I'll just quickly flash 3 short maps which will put in perspective why Chhamb. Now this one is basically for the civilians, because you may not know where Chhamb is. If you see, sorry, I don't know, anyway, you can see where Jammu is, where Akhnur is, where Chhamb is. Now Chhamb is really the southwestern part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now this is a closer portion of that map, and you find Chhamb is a salient on one side of the river called Munawar Tari. And the GT road is barely 35 kilometers. This is the road which connects Lahore with Islamabad, Rawalpindi, sorry. And Pakistan has always been wary of an Indian offensive from here, because if you disrupt the communication and capture territory in Punjab of all the places, you can imagine what happens. And second is, if you look slightly to the right, there is a place called Marala Headworks on the river Chhamb. This is where the canal system starts, which feeds almost the whole of Punjab. And they are also very chary and concerned, because Marala Headworks is pretty close to us, that if we capture that, we can cut off the water, and you can imagine what will happen there. At the same time, if you look at where Chhamb is written and look rightwards towards Akhnur, that white portion, that is an area which is very flat, hardly any defense there. And it is the only place in the whole of Jammu and Kashmir where mechanized forces, tanks, can be used to great effect. So it offers a very good opportunity to Pakistan to launch an offensive and capture Akhnur. And in those days, in 1971, there was only one bridge at Akhnur, and that was a class 18 bridge, which means you could not carry tanks or medium guns over it. These were rafted across the fast-moving waters of Chenab. And if you capture this bridge, the only road which that time went to Punch and Nashara and Rajouri, that's up north, you would have cut off the entire Indian division there. So that is one part of it. Now, the second is, this is a bigger blow-up of that. From the Indian side, therefore, if you look at this map, the only defense lines for India, one is this Manavartavi River, which is next to the ceasefire line. It was called the ceasefire line then. And the other is slightly down, further down, which is near Jauria. That is, you can see it in brown. That is a bit of a ridge line, and that is where we plan to have defenses at that point of time. And then there is a place called Fatwal. Now, in 1965, Pakistan had rolled through this area and reached Fatwal. And they were almost within striking distance of Akhnur, but they couldn't get it. That part later if we have time. So this, in essence, brings out the strategic, one point. And therefore, for India, the Indian planners, as a corollary to what I've just said, the first point is you need to defend forward, right in front. And number two, this salient which I just showed you, the Chhamb, which juts out, is a springboard which we can use for the offensive and capture the very places which they don't want us to. So that brings out the...
You mentioned President Yahya Khan, and he too has a close connect with Chhamb, sir. Could you just elucidate about that?
Yeah. In 1965, when Pakistan launched Operation Grand Slam on 1st of September, the first day's operations were controlled by or commanded by Major General Akhtar Hussain Malik. But from the very next day, 2nd September, the command passed to Major General Yahya Khan, who was a favored man of Ayub. They were very confident that Akhnur would fall in a matter of 72 hours. And therefore, he wanted Yahya Khan to get all the credit. And therefore, Yahya Khan had a strong affinity for this, which was to play up later when he was president. In fact, those of us who served there, you will recall, there is a place where Yahya Khan had his headquarters till the pullout, till the disengagement. And that is called the Yahya Hut. And folklore has it that for many days he used to get his girlfriend there, and he used to stay with him for some time. So that is the Yahya connection here. But another connection is also of General Iftikhar Khan Janjua, whose photograph you saw, the commanding general of the Pakistani side. He also had a connect here because in 65, he was a brigade commander here, under Yahya Khan. And the same team was, a few years down the line, going to be involved here. That was the little connection. Right,
so we have time ticking away, so and we really haven't even started the battle yet. So let's quickly, bring alive the antagonists for the crowd. We speak a word about General Jaswant Singh and about General Iftikhar Khan Janjua. So I'll start with General Jaswant. He's a veteran of the Second World War, as well on the 1965 Indo-Pak War, where he led his battalion to capture the Ichogil Canal. He later commanded 61 Mountain Brigade in the peak of Mizo insurgency. This is in 66-68. On this GOC's military experience, General Sukhwant Singh states, Jaswant Singh was a militarily well-educated officer, had a fair amount of war experience, and was very highly thought of by his fellow officers.
There's a big write-up on General Janjua in this book, but I'll just read one paragraph. The Pakistan's GOC 23 Infantry Division had extensive war experience, having fought in the Second World War in North Africa, as well as in the 1965 Indo-Pakistan War in the Kutch episode, where he had distinguished himself and was awarded the second highest award of gallantry, that is the Hilal-e-Jurrat. He was not new to the Chhamb sector, having, like I said, commanded 6th Infantry Brigade under Yahya Khan in Operation Grand Slam. He thus knew the ground very well and was completely focused on the new defensive plans. He was an infantry officer who had commanded an armored division also.
Right, sir. Now, I have noted a point out here. General Jaswant was the GOC of 10 Infantry Division for about 14 and a half months before outbreak of battle. So the question which beggars an answer is, why wasn't Chhamb ready to face the Pak offensive?
Now, I think it comes out clearly in the book. You see, we had not learned the lessons of 1965. That's the first point. And the second thing is that the senior officers at that time were all World War II veterans and, had that Western mindset of the doctrines prevailing then, which was trading space for time. Now, that was okay for continental wars fought over periods of time, long duration wars, but not in a short war scenario. You can't trade space for time. You lose space, you will not get time to get it back. That is what was the plan all the way till General Jaswant took over. And then he, when he noticed this lacuna, he brought it to the notice of the Corps headquarters. He had carried out an engineer appreciation and suggested that we could make this place defensible by having field fortifications constructed. And it would take just one working season, that's 1 year. But it was not agreed to. This point came time and again. Every time it was not agreed to. It's all in the book again. And the reason was one, not defensible. So this is how it continued, plan number one. Then sometimes in the month of April, so in this plan there were only covering troops, one armored regiment this side of the river and the rest of it behind. If the map is there, I don't know. Now, then in April, he formulated an offensive plan, which was agreed to in July. Now this would get us three gains straight away. First of all, you would preempt the Pakistanis and automatically safeguard Chhamb. Second is you would capture Marala headworks and cut off the water. And the third, very importantly, was because of our plans of that time, it would facilitate operations in the Sakargarh sector because Pakistan would have to react to this and thereby thin out troops there. So this was the second plan which continued. Till 1st November when the chief, Sam Manekshaw, visited the headquarters and he found the same problem. He said, why are you not defending in front? The corps commander was there was a bit of discussion and he said, move ahead. But the move was not to be in permanent defenses. It was to be in what was called forward poise. It was to be in position for the one brigade to be in position for the offensive. But the final twist came on 1st December when all the GOCs were called and they were told 1st December evening, and please...
Let me cover this, sir. 1st December, while Major General Iftikhar Khan Janjua was giving out his final orders for the attack, Major General Jaswant Singh of Indian 10 Infantry Division was summoned to his corps headquarters and told to change his plans from the offensive to the defensive. This is 3 days before the attack came in. This was indeed a curious twist of fate, which was destined to play out over the next 2 weeks in the bloody Battle of Chhamb. While we've spoken about 10 Div, sir, could you just quickly cover what 23 Division and General Janjua were doing all this while?
Okay, we are running short of time, I noticed. So I'll briefly cover. You see, 23 Division had just 3 brigades and an armored regiment, which was sufficient for their defensive plan and to nibble at our covering force. But since General Yahya Khan wanted to aim for Akhnur, he significantly boosted up this division. He gave them 2 more brigades infantry brigades, 1 independent armored brigade, which made a final complement of 3.5 armored regiments, which is not a small amount, and finally 10 artillery regiments. And just to put it in perspective, the artillery used to support this offensive for Pakistan here was more than Pakistan had to defend itself in the whole of East Pakistan. So he built it up and he positioned an officer 1-star rank to coordinate the airstrikes. And for the next 4 months, this division practiced, rehearsed, war-gamed, and did all the reconnaissance. And by 1st of December, as he said, when they got the green signal, they were absolutely a well-oiled machine to strike into us.
And so while you're at it, could you just cover the force ratios?
Force ratios, well, infantry force ratios is the superiority of Pakistan versus India. At the point of attack, on the day of the attack, they had a force ratio of 4:1 as far as infantry is concerned, 10:1 in armor, and 1.7:1 in artillery.
So it's really clear that the Pakistan offensive was completely, weighed down against, force ratios which were completely adverse to 10 Infantry Division, especially west of the river, which was pointed out to you.
I think you all.
All right, so we move on. So now we have a battle of 14 days, and we're going to commence describing this battle out to you all. 14 days of battle. Now, how would you, you can't cover 14 days in one jump. So how would you like to, kind of break this battle down so that we can all comprehend what actually happened?
I think it gets clearly divided into 3 segments. 3rd to 6th, when the battle was this side of the river, west of the river. 7th to 10th, when they made attempts to cross again. And 11th to 17th, when the ceasefire came, when we were planning a counterattacks.
So could you just quickly cover the first 3 days of battle, which perhaps were the bloodiest?
I think I had a lot to say, but I'll just show you one map. Because what happened in the first 3 days this was the period of intense combat. They kept attacking and we kept defending. You will not believe it that some positions of our positions changed hand 5 times in these 3 days. But they were unable to make headway. But what happened is that on 4th, 5th, early morning of 5th really, they broke through with the brigade in the area of north of Chhamb. And they came with the brigade to come behind us and trap our forces there. But what happened, one of their battalions got lost and didn't take part. The other 2 battalions veered off in different directions, and one of them, of course, captured the bridge, which was dangerous for us, and one, unfortunately or fortunately, went into our guns. Now, this needless combat with the our medium guns was to cost them dearly, because although they rendered 2 of our batteries out of action for some time when this combat was going on, the gunfight was such between the 2 that in the morning and this happened at 4 o'clock, imagine 4 o'clock at night in bitter cold of December, you can't see anything. And in the morning, the dead bodies of both sides showed what exactly had happened. But the end result was they went back in disarray and the CO was captured. This was the main, I would say, action. And then the general, outstanding man as he was, he swung his forces from the north and came from the south, found a minefield gap, hit the canal, and we withdrew, blowing up the bridge.
So basically, in the first 3 days, there were 4 brigades in an offensive against 1 brigade. There were virtually 9 squadrons against 1 squadron on the first day before more armor was inducted. These 3 days can be aptly summed up. They stood fast, fighting and bleeding, and then inch by inch, foot by foot, and yard by yard they began to fall back, but it was never a rout. Yard by bloody yard, they fought it out. This was the Chhamb Inferno, with its lobbing grenades, heroic abandon, mud, blood, and the spray of automatic fire. I sincerely hope I've said it out half as good as Melville de Mello did in Jan 1972 in a broadcast over All India Radio called Chhamb, An Agony and Fulfillment. Going on from here, sir, Now, after 3 days, the Pakistani offensive is resting on the western bank of Manawar-Tawi, and they're making attempts to cross it. So could you just quickly cover the next 3 days of battle, sir?
Just in 2 minutes, what happened was that the Pakistan General Janjua was obsessed by crossing, because unless he crossed over, he couldn't head for Akhnur. So he ordered his brigade to attack on the morning of 7th, but they were not ready. So the attack got postponed to 7th night. That gave some time to us. They attacked 7th, 8th night. It was again a 2-brigade attack. And what happened once again, the left brigade got lost. And it was only the right which went in. So that was a weak attack. But they went in, they captured our forward positions, we launched a counterattack, sent them back, and in the bargain killed and wounded a few and captured 15 prisoners. So this was on night 7th, 8th. Now he wanted now to attack the very next night, that's 8th, 9th. But meanwhile, in the previous day, the brigade commander had got wounded and had been evacuated, and there was a new brigade commander, their brigade commander. So he wanted extra time, so he gave him 24 hours more. And on the night of 9th, 10th, they put in a very big attack. And they captured territory on our side of the river. And they pumped in tanks. And they sent in tank hunting parties beyond our troops. The situation was precarious. The General Jaswant rang up the Corps headquarters and asked for reinforcements from the adjoining sector. And they came in. But by the time we counterattacked and the situation was restored. At one point, if you don't mind, I'll make a quick question. General Janjua was not destined to see this attack. The man who was so obsessed. It's very well recorded here, but in just 30 seconds, what happened was that on the evening of 9th, he wanted to go to the frontline brigade and sort of oversee the attack. He called his staff officer at 3:30 in his bunker, briefed him, and the staff officer left at 3:45. And he records in his book that when he left, he heard the general singing very merrily, Allah hamare saath hai, Allah hamare saath hai. He went to the operations room. At 1:04, he heard the helicopter take off, went overhead the operations room. The general was on his way to oversee the attack. 15 minutes later, the telephone rang. The chopper had crashed, the general was wounded, and he was being evacuated.
Now here's the valor of this man. You know, valor is to be respected, whether it's in khaki or it's green. And the general with almost 90% burns on his last legs, being pulled out of a chopper by his G1, that's a General Staff Officer 1. And while being pulled out, he tells his staff officer, "Bachcho, palan wala lena hai. Agar nahi liya to yaad rakhna, puchunga." These were his last words before he was carted off to the hospital, where the next morning at 6 a.m. he succumbed to his injuries. Right. So now we just got 10 minutes and counting. The last 6 odd days of battle.
Now that the situation has stabilized and forces which had come in the evening before were available, so the counterattack plans were made. And on 12th, Operation Order, a new one was issued. But what happened between 12th and 17th was, bit by bit, these forces were pulled out again, instead of sending in more so that we could recapture. The whole thing was stabilized. They kept pulling them out. So on 13th and 14th, one lot went, and on 15th and 16th, another lot went. But on 16th, a fresh plan was made to counterattack. Unfortunately, the unilateral ceasefire intervened, and that was the end of the matter.
Right. General Jaswant had made some very, very determined plans, and he wanted to counterattack, and he wanted to retake every inch of the territory which had been lost. However, it was circumstances and to an extent the ambivalence of a few of his commanders that the counterattack couldn't go through. I'd also like to make a special mention of one particular chapter in this book, which is indeed really exciting. It's about 70 pages of an account of this battle from the other side of the hill. there is a commanding officer, there is a second in command of a squadron who is a major, and there are 2 troop leaders who are just lieutenant and second lieutenant rank officers, all of the Pakistan Armored Corps, the cavalry, and they have given some really, really interesting accounts about this very battle. And I think this book is worth read. I mean, purely for those 70 pages which are so well written, where he recognizes valor for valor, he recognizes cowardice for cowardice, and he says it in as many words. He's talking about his own officers and some of his jawans who were cowards, and their names are mentioned in this book. And there is also some very interesting track and trench humor, and track and trenches, cavalry and infantry humor in this book, where this young second lieutenant who has had an altercation with one of the infantry majors in the morning over how to attack, and they're both visibly upset. They've had an exchange of words. And in the evening, the outfit is expecting General Janjua to come and visit them. So they're all really excited that General Iftikhar is coming. And this young second lieutenant saunters out of the gloom with a cane in his hand. And this very infantry major who sees him comes to shun, gives him a parade ground salute, and starts relating the events of the day, obviously more about himself and his unit. And this second lieutenant, this cocky lad, is listening to him, and he lets him finish his entire litany before he tells him who he is. And the major obviously is extremely upset. And then he says that the officer was visibly annoyed, and I was strongly admonished for my attire and my presence. I walked away whistling into the night and swinging my cane. If a capital offense was not punishable by death, I think he would have shot me in the back. Right. Okay, now I'm going to, I'm sure a lot of you all know this, but I believe half of you don't. The General Jaswant that we've been talking about for the last 34 minutes happens to be the father of the author, and that is General Sandhu, who's sitting to my right. So I'm going to ask him a pointed question, because lots has been said about the Battle of Chhamb, some adverse, and some in absolute glowing terms, including from the Prime Minister herself at that time. So the question which beggars an answer is, General Sandhu, how much of this book was engendered by military pride and military honor, and how much of this book was fostered by family pride and family honor?
I think it was in equal measure, because as you mentioned, this was the toughest battle of the war. And Pakistan's biggest land offensive in 1971 had come here. And the troops had fought with grit and determination to sort of hold them at that river line. And so the story needed to be told. At the same time, now that you've revealed, the GOC was my father, and he was posted out shortly thereafter, along with the brigadier, because the battle at that point was initially viewed in a very negative way, because we had ceded territory. But a few months later, the whole thing, when the facts emerged, they were reassigned, both these officers, the brigade commander and the GOC, and they both rose to the rank of lieutenant general. He had maintained a personal diary, notes, etc. He had wanted to write this book, but unfortunately he passed away while still serving as vice chief. I took over his notes, books, and then did his research. In a sense, to that extent, I have finished his unfinished project.
Right, sir. 355 pages of sheer valor, blood and guts. I think we owe it to you out here that if there is anything specific, any specific act, gallantry, valor, which you would like to bring out, which I suppose is your favorite part of this book, could you just bring it out in about 2 minutes?
You know, there are so many of them, but there are two which merit attention. The first one is that on it, this relates to the 3 coffins that you saw and one photo after that. Subedar Kalidas, you saw it in the... Now, it's about him. there was an attack launched by Pakistan on 8th on a post called Deva. This was preceded by intense artillery bombardment. After very heavy fighting resulting in heavy casualties to the enemy, the Deva was finally captured and our troops fell back to the depth. Subedar Kalidas volunteered to stay back with an energy to cover the withdrawal of this company. It was later learned that when his position was surrounded by the enemy, the brave JCO kept firing till he was shot dead. After the war, his body was handed over the Pakistanis to the unit in a coffin with a citation which read, and I quote, "This is the dead body of Subedar Kalidas of 8 J&K militia. He died while fighting very bravely in area of Deva. He did not leave his trench to the last breath. After inflicting heavy casualties, he became a target of the Ghazi's bullet. His badges of rank are available. A piece of paper was found in his pocket revealing his name." Now, this is a Pakistani citation for an Indian soldier. I think we leave it all.
Yes, I think that's any other gallant action is going to dilute this act of gallantry. So we've got to move on. I had spoken about the unkindness of military history, and I told you that we'll reveal the answer to both valiant accounts at the end of the book. So there is a Major Mahin Malik of the 11th Cavalry of the Pakistan Army who writes, "The Battle of Chhamb, rightfully, should go down in our common history as a great battle in which both sides were victors." That's Major Mahin Malik, a Pakistani officer. Having said so, there is a 95 Brigade connection too. We have the commander sitting out here in front of us. So would you bring out the connection of this book or some of the protagonists to 95 Brigade Kasauli?
I'll bring out 3 connections if there's time. One is 95 Brigade. You see, after the war, Brigadier Jasbir Singh, who was commanding 191 Infantry Brigade, the frontline brigade, was posted out as I mentioned. He was posted to 95 Brigade. And the then commander of 95 Brigade, Brigadier H.S. Kler, the hero of Bangladesh, who was the first to enter Dhaka and happens to be the uncle of Gen Kler on my left, he was promoted and sent to command 10 Infantry Division. And my father, whom he relieved, was sent to 101 Com Zone area in Shillong, who had commanded 95 Brigade. 95 Brigade was under 101 Com Zone, where my father next went. So, in a sense, it was a nice little circle, and now we are sitting here right there and talking about this battle. But one more connection, since 30 seconds I will take 2 more. One is with Kler. I met him for the first time yesterday. And what I didn't tell him, and I'm telling in front of the audience, it will surprise him perhaps, I have served under his father twice. And he's getting to learn it now. Once when his father, who retired as a Lieutenant General later, he commanded 68 Armored Regiment and I was affiliated OP officer. And later when he was used 31 Armored Div, I was a battery commander, Alok. And the third last connect is with Mr. Khushwant Singh, since we are sitting here. The first photograph that you saw, Savior of Chhamb, appeared in the 9th, the edition, Illustrated Weekly edition of 9 January 1972. The article was written then by a person who was then called J. Inder Singh Kalra, who is today known as Jigs Kalra. And that time Bachi, sitting right opposite, was known as Bachi Kanga, if I'm not wrong, and not Karkari. Am I right, Bachi? There you are. Her name is there too. And I was told by Jigs Kalra, I met him in the early 80s, about this, how did you get this photograph? And or the caption. And you know what he said? He said amongst all the photographs that were put up to Mr. Khushwant Singh, he selected this one.
I think we need to pat ourselves on the back, both of us, because we've taken it down to the wire and it just says time's up. And we've covered, 7 days of Chhamb battle in 45 minutes. I didn't think that would be possible. To round it off, is there anything else, sir? Anything else?
Yeah, I think it is befitting that there are many officers whose units fought there, but there are some officers here, veterans, who fought in this battle, and I think I should at least name them. First is then Captain, later Major General Jayant Verma. You saw his photo there. Can I request you to stand up, please, Jayant, wherever you are. Jayant Verma, there he is. The second is Brigadier Papi Trehan of Deccan Horse, whose photograph you saw. There he is, right there. I heard he was here 2 days ago, but I'm not sure if he's here. Is Brigadier H.K. Singh. Is he here? 72 Armor Regiment? Well, he's gone back. Oh, there you are. There's 72. Achha, okay. But you belong to the regiment.
But I can share an anecdote later.
Okay. But these two gentlemen fought there, and I was fortunate to interview them. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I forgot. And he's the one who walked up to the stage. How could I forget him? He's my namesake, Colonel A.J.S.Sandhu. Where, Baljeet? There you are. Thank you.
We are done. If there are any questions, please shoot. The pun is not intended. And I would request you all that since we are tight for time, if there are any comments to be made, if you could just restrict them to 2 to 3 minutes only, because Anand Sethi is frowning at me.
No question. I'll just share one anecdote, because sometimes the book correct each other, and there's an anecdote by the Pakistani lieutenant, which actually gets connected to the, on the Indian side, to my regiment. They got talking on the radio net while Pakistani officers switched on to our frequency. When the name of Mrs. Indira Gandhi was taken in the wrong sense by the Pakistani officer, then the Indian officer got the better of him. But in the end, the Pakistani officer says, I got the better of the argument because I was better in abusing in Punjabi. Now, that is the line. We were talking gentlemanly, and the other side is saying we got the better of you while we had the better abusing ability in Punjabi. But my officers fought for Mrs. Indira Gandhi when something wrong was said. It is misfortune that same evening, both of them got martyred. That is Major Amarjeet and Major M.L. Safaya. Thank you.
So they were more than bullets and rockets, there were words too.
Yeah, what happened and how they were martyred is in the book also.
I am General Panag. I was in Chhamb in 5-6 till about the end of November when I was posted to Ethiopia. I'd just like to make 2-3 comments. First, I would like to request the author whether any veterans, particularly rank and file, were interviewed by the author for this book. May I have your views, please?
The short answer is no. And the reason is that I had written to all the units. In fact, I wrote to each and every unit which took part, and asking them to make, tell me if there was anybody who knew. But unfortunately, I did not get any addresses from them.
Done. Second thing which I'd like to tell you, that I was in covering troops. I had the privilege to brief General Jaswant, and I have all the admiration for him and for later General R.K. Jasbir Singh. One point is that it is in my knowledge, through my people of my company, JCOs, they are still alive. One is 93, I go and meet him every time I can. He was sent from the brigade. The brigade commander rang up our commanding officer, my security has bolted, send me 8 or 9 guys who can give me security of the brigade headquarters. This was the situation there. When the order for withdrawal came, General Jasbir Singh emphatically said that I can still hold on to Chhamb, the town aspect, because 5-6 entire position was intact, except for one platoon which had been lost. That was Mandiyala North. 303 had been lost. It was recaptured. He just wanted to cover the Chhamb built-up area. It was refused, and the orders were given for withdrawal. So 5-6 withdrew. And the last point I'd like to make, that there was an ally of 5-6 which stalled a lot of, upset the Pakistani plans 22 Armored Regiment of Pakistan came to, when the position was vacated, they came into Chhamb. And there, the canteen stores, that was our permanent location, so the canteen stores, there was a lot of rum. And the result was that 22 cab was ineffective for next 24 hours. So
it's in the book, sir.
I would suggest that the future commanders also include para-dropping rum in Pakistani positions.
I just want to say one thing, that sir, by the way, whatever you said, it's an honor to be speaking with you because you belong to 5 Sikh, which has been acknowledged by Pakistan. But much of what you said is in the book. I couldn't cover it now. But as far as rum is concerned, the same fellow, he writes what you have said. And the second thing he said is because we had so much of Indian liquor, we started getting visitors from outside for no reason at all, just to have that. That's also in the book.
Sir, I have a question. Sir, I have a question. Have we generally seen a trend of armor not being able to exploit a breakthrough that the infantry has made? For example, you mentioned that attack on the morning of the 5th, I think. So what were the reasons of this, and was this characteristic of this conflict where an opportunity was lost because armor just couldn't take advantage?
No, it's not because armor couldn't take it on. That was never the reason. I told you, in the first instance, they went through, the infantry went through, and then they got needlessly involved in that artillery battle. That delayed them. And in the delay, firstly, they lost people, and secondly, when they went and captured what they were to capture, we had already reinforced with a battalion, and they sent them rolling down the hill. And the bridge was attacked from both sides. And we again recaptured it. Now, the tanks were in the process. See, what happens is the infantry affects a bridgehead. Certain amount of area is captured. And when they say it is successful, then the armor goes through. What I did not cover in the book is, and it makes interesting reading for those who would like to read, the Pakistani version of this attack. Exactly what you're saying. They got a signal. Their general in the morning was successful, so he set off with his jongas and his brigade commanders to sort of pat those guys on the back. And he positioned his armor to break out the next 2 regiments. But what does he find? In their version, written by their staff officer who he mentioned, that he suddenly saw 1 man, then 2 men, then an RCL jeep, then a bedraggled, harassed, looking tired. And this was the force which was withdrawing. So he says, what was happening? We were shocked. We thought that we had captured it, and here was a force coming back. So the tanks go through, on the other occasion, they went through. But our counterattacks then recaptured the positions, and the tanks either pulled back or were captured by us. Some of the photos you saw in the thing. So that's the answer to your question.
So 30 years down the line, I commanded 5 Assam. This was the unit which was most severely mauled. We had 5 officers dead and close to 100 casualties. And we had no awards. My unit got the only infantry unit to get the battle honor of Chhamb 11 years down the line when the battle was revisited. I just would like to bring out one small thing, that during this battle, or prior to this battle, like the general has written in his book perhaps, we were not prepared in the sense that we were to go in for an attack. We were not prepared to defend. We were in a firm base, hoping for the attack to be launched through us. There were no minefields, there were no obstacles, we were in the open. The defenses were hurriedly dug, there was no overhead protection. There were no communication trenches, there were only crawl trenches. And we were under devastating fire all the time. And at that time, the orders were fight to the last man, the last round. There were protective patrols across, there were screen positions across, who fought to the last man, to the last round. That's it, I want.
Salute to all the generals. I'm not even a Jawan actually. But sir, God forbid it doesn't happen again. But what if it were to happen one more time? And how do you foresee the future for us?
I think this is an excellent question. And coming from you, I think it makes it even more interesting. Because, as they say, if you don't learn from history, you are condemned to repeat it. And that's what had happened 3 times. And I have no doubt, I couldn't cover so much because of the time paucity, but I have no doubt that even next time they will attack. But now I feel much of the lessons have been learned. We have built field fortifications right up to the river. We have got our plans ready to go in. I mean, I can't divulge more than that. Were they to come, which I think they will still try, we are better prepared. And if they don't come, or if we preempt them, we will go in. And this time we will capture Marara Barrage, and we will cut off the water, and we will seal the fate of Pakistan.
And if we have to tell you the offensive plans of 10 division, then we'll have to shoot you. All right.
Yes, here I am. I am Colonel Sandhu, gunner officer. I was 5-6 at point 303. But General Panag, CS Panag has said, I would like to reiterate that the Mandala North and Mandala South, the whole feature, that was intent. When we were asked to withdraw, it was an emotional departure of the territory that is about 100 square kilometer. And but CO Punjab, this 5 said, he is absolutely right in telling that the situation was so fluid. We did not know what the operations are going to be. 191 Brigade in a holding position, and then the rest of the division is going to be on the offensive. Major mine gap left between Bhogi and Barsala. We have not gone into the details of that, but nevertheless, then we are sitting on the dependent qualities. The information we are passing, the intelligence information, 23 divisions, massive build-up, armor build-up. Nobody trusting us. They are saying, no, these are all dummy tanks, and that is the build-up. And when the attack came, at that time, the General Iftikhar Janjua went on to the south. Deva axis were thinly held and had 13 AK battalion established a firm base beyond Manawar Tavi. We were totally vulnerable, and 191 Brigade would have been really vulnerable. I would say that 191 Brigade fought ruthlessly and relentlessly to save the 10 Infantry Division. There is no doubt Brigadier R.K. at that time, and the other brigade commander like Brigadier Morlin and Brigadier K.K. Hajari, they also played their role exceedingly well. But also the point here which I am about to make, AJ, that 191 Brigade, had that been strengthened by the 2 brigades kept in the concentration area, that is 52 Brigade and 68 Brigade, I am sure the Chhamb salient, that is about 100 kilometer area, we won't have lost. We were very strong at the complete feature Mandala North and Mandala South, the position held by 5-6. Thank you.
So, we've finished. We're not taking any more questions or comments, but a homage to all serving soldiers and all the veterans, especially the veterans who are here. And this goes out especially to my father-in-law, who himself is a Mahavir Chakra from the Battle of Dera Baba Nanak, who's fighting his last battle. He's had 30 chemotherapies. He's fighting a battle against cancer. He's hanging in there. So this goes out to all soldiers and all veterans. I just want you all to know, soldiers, they do not go gentle into the good night. They burn, they rave at close of day. They rage against the dying of the light. Thank you.